Hi, and welcome to Dr. Mel's Message. Today's interview is with a Mr. Jerry Blyton, and his book, The Legacy Artifacts, the First of the Warm World Mysteries, is the book we're going to talk about. Now, he has other books, but this one is our latest and up and coming in new. So without further ado, welcome, Jerry. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. So first of all, let's talk a little bit about who Jerry Blyton is and what made you come up with this book, Legacy Artifacts.
Okay, well, I think an essential thing that people need to know about me is that I was raised in the United States Air Force. My father was a career veteran. He was actually in three services. He, right out of high school, he joined the Marines, and then when World War II started, he joined the Army.
Wow.
And by the end of the World War II, he had switched to the Army Air Corps, which then became the United States Air Force. And that's what he retired from because he did that because to make more money for his family, he knew that if he had flying hours and combat hours, so at the end of the war, he was a radio operator on B-29s. So,
wow.
So I was raised in mostly in Western states, and once in Japan. We lived in Japan for 2 years when I was 6 and 7 years old. So anyway, and one thing a service brat, regardless of the military service you're in, one thing you learn is you're going to be moving. You're not going to be wherever you are forever. You're going to be moving. And when you move, the first thing you have to do is assert yourself at the new place so that there's both protection, because if you get enough people to like you, you won't get beat up. And if you, but often I did have to fight somebody, so there was always some boy that wanted to fight me because I was new and I was a service brat. And the purpose of those fights, so we were never trying to hurt each other much. We just wanted to see if the other guy is going to stand up and trade licks.
Oh, wow.
And as long as that happened, then we would go away friends. and and it happened almost every time, starting when I was probably 8, when we came back and I was in Northern California. That was the first time that happened.
So this is something actually that you put up with your entire life while you were in school.
Well, Dad retired when I was 12, and that's when we went to Alabama because he wanted to get a degree in elementary teaching.
Mm-hmm.
And so after his military career, for 10 years, he was a elementary school teacher.
Interesting.
And so that's basically my youth. But having lived in some very cold places like Spokane, Washington, and Cheyenne, Wyoming, I had learned to hate snow.
Oh.
So when I hit Florida, it was so warm that for 2 years I didn't wear shoes or shirts. I mean, I wore them if I went to school, but when I was home, I just took everything off and ran free,
Wow.
Because to me, it never got cold in Florida. So I said, I'm staying here. This is, I hate snow, and it doesn't snow in Florida, so I'm staying. I was a teenager then.
Wow. Well, that's a background, number one, worth telling, because I'm sure you've gone to many, many places around the world. Now, let's transition for a second.
Okay.
Let's talk about the First of the Warm World Mysteries. Now, this is a series separate from your other series. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah. It has the same detective of my Buck Jasper's detective series. But in this case, once I realized that I was involving global warming
Mm-hmm.
and globalization in the mystery, I thought this is significant, and I'm going to change the name of the series to The Warm World Mysteries. I already have written 2 more, by the way. I have 2 rough drafts for the second and third mystery ready for somebody to look at. But So I'm moving fast on this.
Well, that is fabulous. I always ask what's next, and you just answered that question before I could even jump in and ask you. So we have two more books following this one. Well, tell me, first of all, I know that we crossed the bridges over to warmer globing, but this takes place, or I should say, a Peruvian anthropologist, right?
Right. He steals the.
That's Sergio. That's one of the characters.
Yeah, Sergio is a junior anthropologist in the for the Peruvian anthropology section, and they were about to put the Romeo and Juliet, and they call it the mummies Romeo and Julieta because they were teenagers, a male and a female, but they were from different tribes. Their clothing, but they were royalty within the tribes, and so they got named Romeo and Julieta de los Andes because, and so they were about to be put on an exhibit in Lima when he absconded with them and appeared in Florida. And so, so the consul comes to the Peruvian consul in Miami, comes to Buck, and because he knows his firm has a reputation for salvaging things.
Okay.
And so the Peruvian government basically hires him to find the mummies and bring them back to Peru. And so the only thing he knows is Sergio Michioki is the one that carried them and brought them to the United States. And so the police in Peru have sent along everything they knew about Michioki. And so based on that, then Buck comes up with a plan to try to find him.
And that's where the action, because this is almost like an Indiana Jones, but modern day version set in Peru.
Yeah, in fact, there's a photograph, you'll see this in the story, there's a photograph that comes with the stuff that the government had assembled in this folder to give him. And one of them is a picture of Sergio Michioki in a wide-brimmed hat up in the mountains. And based on that photograph, the media had nicknamed him Peruviano Jones.
Boy, I was very close, wasn't I?
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, man, you hear the old saying that, your cover is your sales tool. Well, in this case, yours really is, because it looks like it would be part of the Indiana Jones. So,
yeah.
Well done.
And it has Egyptian mummies along with the Peruvian mummies on the cover because in the middle of the mystery, he's decided that it has to be an American billionaire that brought because only a billionaire could afford to keep mummies and take care of them.
Right, because of the atmospheric conditions that they face.
Right, but he doesn't know, he has yet no clue who that is, but he hears that there are 17 mummies have been discovered in Egypt, so he sends a couple operatives to Egypt to see if they can spot two particular mummy thieves, and if those who are also suspected in the Peruvian thing are there, maybe he can get a handle on who the billionaire is. And that's why they're both on the cover, because it involves both. It starts with the Peruvian mummies, but then the Egyptian mummies get involved too.
Have you always had a fascination with anthropology or mummies or Egypt, or is this just something you decided to write about?
Well, I'm a history buff.
Okay.
So that would mean that I probably have some knowledge of it, and as a side, my daughter is a physical anthropologist.
Oh, wow.
She works in New Mexico with pottery and bones and stuff that she finds on sites. So I guess you might say there's an awareness of those kind of things in my mind.
Have you ever been to Egypt?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I had to. That's where the research came in, because in order to make it convincing and realistic, you have to learn enough to show what the site in Egypt will be like, and also to show the things about Sergio Michioki that will allow him to track the criminal and locate him. And so I had to do a lot of research, especially in Peru, about what one might find in a grave site. And so that gave me a lot of fill in, because along with the mummies, they also have about $250,000 worth of golden figurines and so on.
Well, I am so glad that you brought up the fact about researching. With my company, I own Absolute Author Publishing House, and I see a lot of books and I reject a lot of books. And the ones that I end up rejecting and not publishing, you can tell they don't really know their topic. They don't understand, and they didn't put in the background research to make it realistic and what I call the believability factor. But your book is not missing that at all. I mean, it's believable. Your characters are believable.
Right.
So
Thank you.
I am glad that you brought up, for any new authors listening to this, take heed what he is saying about researching your topic for the authenticity. Congratulations again on that. I mean, what I've seen so far, you have a novel that has the potential not only to become a bestseller, but this one is going to grab a hold of a whole lot of different, what I call target audiences, because you're going to have those people that like that action and adventure and that Indiana Jones things. But then you're going to have those people that like the historical nature of it, and mummies and Egypt. So I think you can cross what I say barriers and target audiences from young to old. And that's hard to do with a book.
Well, that would be nice.
Now, let's talk about this billionaire for a minute. Not undercover per se, but they get into a lot of things trying to track this guy, right?
Right. Huh?
I know that they kind of have to go.
Right. Well, based on what he knows about Florida, his first attempt he's thinking, well, if you're going to keep mummies that are not, they haven't been mummified like the Egyptian mummies, they've just been preserved because of their height and cold atmosphere, lack of oxygen at that altitude. So he knows that whoever has them is going to have a really strong air conditioning system that can keep the temperature really low and also keep the display arid. Mm-hmm. So this is some expensive equipment. So he starts thinking where somebody that could afford it, a possible billionaire, could put such a setup. And so he decides not in the Keys, because anyone trying to do that in the Keys would be noticed immediately by the public and the media.
Right.
So it has to be somewhere where there's more land available, so that he can hide a bit. So with that, he also Michioka, loves Peruvian food, and he likes young women, and he also races sports cars.
Right.
So in looking around the state, he finds that Orlando is a likely area because it has more land to expand around, and for people to have large estates. There are like almost 20 Peruvian restaurants in the Orlando area. So Michioka would be able to eat his favorite food. Plenty of young women in the area too, because of the universities and so on in Orlando. And there is a sports car club in Central Florida, sports car club, that he could get into if he wanted to race sports cars still, because Michioka is only 32 years old.
Okay.
So he figures a young guy is not going to give up what he wants. If he was an older man, he could survive without all that stuff. But a 32-year-old who loves racing cars, loves uh, making love to young women, and loves Peruvian food, he's going to want to be where he can enjoy those things still.
You've got one interesting character here. Now, for those of you that just may be joining us right now, I am speaking with Jerry C. Blyton, and he is an author, actually, I should say, not just an author, a prolific author with more than 20 books. He's taught high school English, managed bookstores. He's been an academic dean. He's an English professor and a writer. And with that said, if you really want to, dive into a well-written book that's exciting and adventurous and has that historical aspect, and you love mummies and Egypt and Peruvian, this is the book for you. Now, with that said, Jerry, I know that this is a series. You told me that. Where do you see this series heading? Is it going to be a 3 and done or more?
Well, I doubt if it's going to be 3 and done because, like I said, I have 14 Buck Jasper's mysteries before this one.
Right.
So now that I have this idea of global warming, global oceanization involved, like I said, I've already got 2 rough drafts ready to follow this one. And they both have aspects of global warming and global, in fact, one of them takes place during the pandemic. And so everybody's wearing masks. So how do you tell the good guys from the bad guys?
And this is a good point.
Yeah,
it's
because
kind of difficult.
And how do you identify the bad guys if they're all wearing masks? And it's about burglars that during the pandemic have stolen millions of dollars from wealthy residents along the coast, both the Gulf Coast and the Gold Coast of Florida. That's what that one is about.
Yeah. Now, I know that you live in Florida, so you were able to bring in the locale of Florida into this.
Yes. Yeah, I've lived all over the state at various times, but last many decades now, I've lived near Miami.
Okay. Here's a question for you. With this many books, all right,
mm-hmm.
What advice would you have for new authors?
Well, okay. Well, there are different kinds of authors. There are authors that decide at some point in their life, I'm going to write a book about something. But I was not that kind. I was the kind that, even from childhood, I was writing. I wrote my first poetry at 3 years old.
Wow.
And in elementary school, my stories were the ones that the teacher pulled up and read to the class. So it was always with me. And so it's not like I was not going to be a writer. I was a writer, and I am a writer. And so I always have these ideas in my head, and the only way to get them out is to write them down. And I think, and so I'm a writer because I'm a writer. It's like part of my being.
I love that.
And I have stories always going through my head, and poetry. I write poetry besides the books too, and short stories. But
are we going to see a poetry book come out or a short story collection?
Yeah. Some of the books that are listed in I have 35 books listed on my website, and several of them are books of poetry.
Okay.
Remember, I lived in Japan, and one of the poetry books I call Tanka Time, because I was thinking about my boyhood in Japan when I was 6 and 7 years old, and I thought of all the things I did, and I said, why don't I write poems about these things? And then the more I thought about it, I said, but it's in Japan, so why not write a Japanese form of poetry called a tanka?
Okay, how does that differ from like a haiku or something?
It's the syllable count is a little longer. The lines are a little. There were more lines, and so you can put more into it than a haiku. So it's instead of 3 lines, we're working with probably 7 lines in a tanka.
Okay.
And so this is a book of tanka poems about my time in Japan when I was a boy.
Wow. Like I said, you're a prolific writer. One of my own taglines that I use is that I don't feel right, WIGHT, if I don't write,
Yeah.
WRITE. I literally wrote my first book in the 7th grade, a romance
Okay.
novel.
All right. Yeah.
And 9 books later, here I am. So I get you, Jerry.
Yeah.
I totally understand where you're coming from. So.
Well, I've worked a lot of other jobs to make a living because, early on my books, I didn't sell any books at first. In fact, I wrote 10 manuscripts on typewriters before computers came along.
I understand.
I had a couple agents, but they could never sell my books. And they basically told me, we don't know who your audience is for those books. So basically those 10 manuscripts never got published and they're boxed somewhere, but they're not that good because I know I was better once I started publishing.
Yeah, but
things.
then you can go back and rewrite those.
Yeah, if I want to. If I want to. But
yeah.
even when I was working other jobs, sometimes I would get ideas for writing, and some of my jobs where I was like a manager, it wasn't that significant. I could just go into my desk and sit there and write, and nobody bothered me since I was usually the one in charge. And so I could do that a little bit. But even when I was teaching, I remember one time in college, I'm teaching, and suddenly this idea came to me while I was in front lecturing. And I said, excuse me a minute. I just raised my hand to the class and I said, excuse me a minute. And I wrote down real quickly everything that was going through my mind. It took about 5 minutes and I said, okay, back to the lesson.
Oh no.
Yeah.
It's like when a concept hits you, it hits you and there's nothing, and you're no going back, apparently.
Oh, right.
Do you ever dream your plots or your characters?
Yeah. I have another rough draft of this is not a mystery.
Okay.
I would call it it's a fantasy novel about warrior nuns. And this was a dream. It came to me in a dream. And I woke out of that dream in the middle of the night. It was so vivid. I said, I got to write this down. And so I just got the computer up and turned the light on and I started writing what I remembered from the dream. I put it on my Facebook page and it got, especially women, just loved it. And they were said, give me more. And so I said, well, I'm going to turn this into a novel. And so I have but I have no idea because it's so weird and so strange that I don't know.
Define weird and strange. Coming from an author that writes about mummies, if you think it's weird and strange, I want to know what your definition of weird and strange is.
Well,
I'm being serious about this. Now, come on.
Well, actually, it's weird and strange to other people, but it's not really weird and strange to me.
Okay.
And so
that's how I feel about my books on serial killers.
Oh, all right. You right about that?
I do. So I want to hear your definition of weird and strange.
Well, it's in this particular. These are really they're nuns. They have a convent, and they have convents all over the area where the story takes place in a time that never existed, but a lot of it is medieval like thing. So the story actually starts with a nun cutting off the head of the local lord and then riding a horse off the parapet into the moat to escape. But her habit is so heavy that she has to strip it off of her so she won't drown.
Okay.
So she emerges from the moat naked and carrying a sword, but she's in excellent shape. So she starts running toward the forest, and everybody's like, and the archers on the walls, look, she's so beautiful too that they don't shoot at her. Everybody's just looking at her because it was so strange. And then then the word comes around, the Lord of the castle has been beheaded. That was the dream.
Wow.
And it was based on that I started the book. And so it's, and it involves all kinds of, there's no, there aren't concepts of race in the book because everybody in the book is accepted as a human being. There are also LGBTQ characters that are part of the book too. And in fact, the emperor, turns out, was a transgender who began as a woman. She went to the convent, and and then she told the Mother Superior that, hey, I think I'm really a man. And she says, well, we can do surgery to help you get there, but once you become a man, you have to leave the convent.
Oh.
But she actually, so she becomes a man, goes home to her father, his father now, and his father is a very powerful politician in the book. So the son actually winds up becoming emperor. The transgender person becomes emperor, was a woman, now a man, but very much connected to the nuns because she was in the convent until she turned into a man.
And so you dreamed all that?
Well, I dreamed the first part.
Okay.
As the novel developed, all these other, like the emperor wasn't part of the dream. I added him later.
Wow.
So it's a little weird.
Did you dream any part of the legacy artifacts, or was that just all you?
Well, that was all me. There was not a dream. That was just my mind working. There was another book one of the best Buck Jasper's mysteries, book 9, called Silent Partner.
Yeah.
Was a dream by a student. And she was president of the student body. And so one day she came to me in the tutoring area and said, Professor Blanton, I had a dream last night that was really strange. And she said, I think it would make a good mystery. And can I tell it to you? And I said, by all means.
Right.
And it was a wonderful story. And I said, boy, you're right. This would be a great mystery. And so I acknowledge her as the dreamer at the front of the book,
Mm-hmm.
And it has become, it got 4 stars reviews when it first came out, and it's now listed at 5 stars on Goodreads.
Wow.
Called Silent Partner.
Yeah. Do you ever experience writer's block or anything like that?
No, I don't. Because my imagination is so fertile, what happens is sometimes I'll be writing a book, and in the middle, I'll get this inspiration for another book. And so I start writing the other book, and then once I get far along in that, then I might go back to the other book. But I don't really have a block. I get interested in something else and start heading in a different direction.
All right. For everyone out there, Jerry, and this will be my last question of the day, what is your favorite type of book to write? Is it mystery, sci-fi, novels, poetries, or what? What's your favorite?
Actually, I think my favorite thing is probably historical novels.
Okay.
But they're harder to write.
Yeah, they are harder to write.
I can turn out a mystery in about 6 months. But I published a few historical novels, and they generally take 2.5 years to get, because I really have to do a lot of research, make sure of times, places to fit the characters into so that it reads.
All right. Well, I really appreciate the time that you spent with me. Again, I've been talking to Jerry Blyton, a very prolific writer, and his newest book is called Legacy Artifacts, the first of the Warm World Mysteries. Now stay tuned for the cover reveal trailer. Again, I'm Dr. Mel.